Pashaparo, riding at 7. Thank you for tuning. The replay. So, I was doing my little random thing on the internet, coming across information, and I was into the jet stream. Yeah. So today's video is gonna be why go to Mars, quote unquote, before we can make water on Earth. And I'm gonna tell you how I got to this question with this video. So when we look at the jet stream, this is supposedly from sometime recent, as like today. And that got me wondering about, historically, the jet streams. Because some research in the past that we may or may not have talked about already kind of shows with the potential grand solar minimum affecting the jet stream, creating wandering jet streams due to the lax magnetic field due to the, domino effect. So the concept of the wandering jet stream basically was already put into my mind. And I've been following something else here recently, last 4 weeks or so, about the Lake Mead and the water drought out west. And the irony is, that's when I was looking at places I was gonna go, that's why I didn't go like long term out west, because of potential water shortages, just in the, not so much in the like this, but more so just in the environment itself. If there was to be a collapse of society in some sort, whether it's just infrastructure or what have you, what does the surrounding topography and landscape, terrain offer to sustain once all the conveniences are gone? So this is what got me thinking. All right, the Lake Mead water crisis. See, now the thing is, this one is actually from 2015. This article here. Yeah, May 2nd, 2015. All right, let's review this one first. So it says this week, the water level in Lake Mead dropped to an all-time low of, at the time, 1,080 feet above sea level. And that was for the first time in 78 years, going on 7 years ago. Right? So as drought continues to afflict the American West, the dire situation at Lake Mead will continue to have consequences for all states like Arizona, California, and Nevada that draw their water supply from Lake Mead. Right? And here's a little video we can get a glimpse of real quick.
We take water for granted. Ben Franklin was right. You learn the value of water when the well runs dry. And human behavior has replicated that time after time after time. I was general manager of the Water Authority from its inception in 1991 until I retired in 2014. I was general manager of the Water District, and I was the governor's chief negotiator on the Colorado River. Every single Monday morning, we had a senior staff meeting. My head of engineering and operations walked in and she said, "Pat, we've got a huge problem. The snowpack in the upper Colorado is so bad, we are not going to get even 30% of normal runoff. The reservoirs are going to crash. We're not going to be able to take additional water out of Lake Mead. And Arizona puts us on notice. They can't bank for us." All the dominoes started falling. Between Mead and Powell, you have over 50 million acre-feet in storage when they're full. So to have them both going down to quarter capacity is a pretty scary proposition. The loss of water in that reservoir system has been enormous. Go look at the bathtub rings. They're scary. Lake Mead is full at sea level elevation 1220. Today, it is down around 1080. 5 more feet, and Lake Mead goes into shortages. And all of us take a haircut. We build this huge tunnel underneath Lake Mead so that we can access even the last drop should the worst of all possible scenarios happen. We began to implement a whole series of measures aimed at driving down residential use. We banned grass in the front yards. We put in water waste ordinances. We put the community on a watering schedule. We even put covenants on the property. The entire Las Vegas Strip, with the fountains and 40 million tourists a year that come through, as their net water footprint, they use 3 to 4% of all the water. So everything that's used inside in those hotels is captured, treated, and reused, either indirectly or directly. We all recognize and identify ourselves
What happens in
as
Vegas
citizens
stays
of
in
a
Vegas.
community. And we identify ourselves as citizens of a state. And we identify ourselves as citizens of a nation. We never identify ourselves as citizens of a watershed. Water is a basic human right because you need it in order to live. But what you don't have a basic human right to is that water is pumped from great depths in Lake Mead, treated to a very safe standard, and then pumped 2,500 feet to your front door to where all you have to do is turn on the tap. That infrastructure costs money. So in your capacity as a human being, if you believe it's a basic human right, take your bucket, go to Lake Mead, knock yourself out. Take as much as you want. If you want it treated and delivered at your house on a guaranteed 24/7 basis, then you have an obligation to help defray those infrastructure and operating costs. The impact of climate change is going to play itself out in the water arena. And to simply turn your head and say it's not going to affect us is insanity.
So this is 2015. And things like this, and what I'm going to show you in this video, it always makes me wonder. And I thank you for sharing this entertainment with me at this time. So, if this was almost 7 years ago, what has been done to counterbalances? What has been put in place in the last 7 years to prevent this experience from repeating? is it something that can be prevented? First question. So if you're talking about the glacier caps or the mountains, right, then maybe you're speaking about something that's beyond our control. If you're speaking about the access to palatable water, that may be something that is in our control. So let's go into this next situation that I came upon relative to this water situation that's happening. And it's been happening. So, major corporations commit funding to help Lake Mead. And I was really sitting here for a moment like, what does funding have to do with it? And I know we heard in the segment in the video prior that, you know, the infrastructure has a maintenance cost. Well, to respond to that, or my reflection on that, is what wasn't implied strongly enough, I think, is the growth of the population, both residential and commercial, in the Southwest in the time period since the Hoover Dam has been built and all that infrastructure was originally built. And I'm taking it, I know when you think about what she was talking about, it sounded like treating it, delivering it to the door, you know, it's like piping and the water treatment plants, but all that system really goes all the way to the Hoover Dam, which then goes to Lake Powell, if I'm right. So it's a whole system. It's been turned into a machine to store and deliver water on demand, basically, right? So scratch off the maintenance costs. We know that exists. But I was looking at it from the terms of if there's a shortage, quote unquote, right? What is money to Lake Mead itself, right? This is where I'm, because of the way it's worded, I'm like, they didn't say, okay, we're getting money for the whole system and we're gonna put in new piping. They didn't say that. They said to help Lake Mead, right? So I was wondering, how does money help the lake if the only thing that at this point the lake can do is hold water, and the problem is that there's a shortage of water? How will funding help reverse a shortage of water to a lake? Not the extraction of, not the processing, but the lake itself, right? Okay, that's how I'm looking at it. You know, maybe I'm being too analytical, but it led me down this path, and you're joining me on the journey. So, Business for Water Stewardship has helped facilitate over $4 million in corporate and philanthropic funding to increase water supply reliability for Arizona, Nevada, and California through a system of conservation projects with Colorado River Indian tribes, known as CRIT. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder who they are, right? CRIT. So the funds were provided by leading corporations and brands, including Intel, and here's a whole list over here, right? Intel, Dr. Pepper, Coca-Cola's on there a couple times. etc., etc. Okay, so this landmark collective funding agreement from major corporations and philanthropic match is the single largest collaborative funding effort of its kind and complements existing funding from the state of Arizona to compensate the CRIT for conserving up to 150,000 acre feet of its Colorado water, right? Directly shoring up declining water levels in Lake Mead. The funding also supports the tribe's long-term efforts to modernize irrigation systems and conserve additional water. The $4 million raised achieves the nonprofit and philanthropy sector goal to raise $8 million and closes the full $38 million project gap. So this is 100% of the target and secures the full benefit of 150,000 acre feet of conserved water for Lake Mead. Now, when I looked into this further, right? I had more questions. So here's a quick shout out of some of the companies involved, right? And I'm gonna tell you what I'm looking at here, right? So this person says our contribution to the DCP was just the beginning of our plan to actively manage our water rights to both provide for our people and to protect and preserve the river, says Keith Moses, Vice Chairman of the Colorado River Indian Tribes. We look forward to continuing to work with our federal, state, and nonprofit and corporate partners to maximize the environmental and economic value of our Federal Reserve water rights. This is a team effort, and we know we can build upon our successes in years to come, right? And then PG has something to say, right? Now, here's the thing. As the businesses and philanthropic communities come together to assure long-term water security for Arizona through financial commitments to shore up Lake Mead, we are thrilled to work with the partners to be a part of this, blah, blah, blah. So the project contributes to the longer-term priorities of CRIT to modernize irrigation infrastructure. So what that's talking about, and I think we get to it in another article here, is how they have farms, and they farms is booming. Like CRIT, the Colorado River Indian Tribes, they got these farms, and they're making, like, per reports on this article, $90 to $100 million a year on just the farm output. So, and then, you know, their people are supposed to use the water as well. You know, so this investment in the Lower Colorado River Basin's water future will drive water solutions, right? So for cities and communities in California, Nevada, and Arizona, continuing to make the Southwest a great place to invest, hire, and grow. Now that sounds great, right? However, I was wondering why and how. So look at that. We got this article here, right? Because Colorado River tribes seek approval from Congress to put their water on the market in Arizona. And I was just thinking, like, why would you do that? All right, and this was from December of 2020, so it was right at the end of last year. So, get into the article a little bit on the Arizona, California. Okay, hold on. Lost the article. So, on the Arizona and California border, where Colorado River pushes against Higgate Rock Dam, churning waters pours into a wide canal. Okay, and this runs across the desert, flowing toward farmlands of the Colorado River Indian tribes. Now, this is cool because we're gonna learn in this article that they were given this down here by the Supreme Court. So like this is just setting the background, setting the stage for you all to catch up to my what I'm seeing here, right? So this tribal nation is the largest single user of Colorado River water in Arizona, with rights to divert about 662,000 acre feet per year, more than double the amount of water diverted for the state of Nevada. So this tribe gets double the diversion water, or double the amount of water diverted to them as the whole state of Nevada, right? It says, but unlike other tribes elsewhere in Arizona, the Colorado River Indian tribes, or CRIT, are legally barred from leasing. See, they're legally barred from leasing water to growing cities and suburbs. The reasons go back to 1964 decree by the U.S. Supreme Court that established the tribal water rights, and to a law enacted in 1790s that limits tribes' authorities to make such deals without congressional approval. So, one, they said they were building this tunnel to the bottom of the Lake Mead, right? Not normal way. So who's monitoring that tunnel? Like, how do you know that the water isn't low because they're taking the water out the tunnel? You know what I'm saying? And then that creates the situation where the bathtub rings exist, where they're saying that it's at an all-time low, and that sets the stage for something like this to come into play on the table, right? And for me, it was quite interesting because they go on to talk about how they were actually, let me find it here for you, actually wanting to like the contracts they were in for some of their farms back in the day was like $1 per acre, like the government was renting from them. You know what I mean? And they actually they said the last ones just recently expired, right? So they're looking to get more favorable deal. And it was a pretty long article here. But what I'll do is we can go over it. We'll just go over it real quick. All right, so chairman, what was important on this side? So it says, we did this as a tribe because we wanted to claim our own destiny with our land and our water. Pat said during a virtual meeting on a proposal earlier this month, right? So what CRIT is wanting to do is get onto the law books as being able to lease their water. Now, what they're saying they're going to do is it'll benefit them because they'll be able to upgrade their irrigation systems for their farms, basically. And that's where it was talking about how they have these farms and they make $90 to $100 million a year just off the farms alone. The deal was supposed to be for like something stupid, like 38 million or some shit. But then they're saying that they would give the water rights of leasing whatever percentage of their water to whatever state it was, right? Arizona, I think it was, and they'll get the money from it. But my thing was, these agreements could be upwards to 100 years. All right, so check out how researchers hope to preserve and restore. Anyway, so with nearly 300,000 acres in Arizona and California, right, with the river running through it. On the Arizona side, the federal government owns the system of irrigation canals, which is operated by the Bureau of Indian Affairs and carries water to about 79,000 acres of farm. The water serves as an economic engine for the tribes, supplying large farming operations that produce hay, cotton, and wheat, as well as smaller amounts of crops such as potatoes and carrots. The market value on the crops grown in 2020 was estimated to be at $95 to $100 million. So it says here the crescent-shaped expanse of farms along the river covers an area about 1/4 the size of Phoenix. But each acre of fields planted with alfalfa or cotton, when compared to the water needs of a suburban home, consumes significantly more water. So the farms are flood irrigated. Water flows through with gravity down the canals and ditches, saturating the fields, and the farmland soaks up a portion of the water that's diverted, and the remainder drains off the fields, flowing back into the Colorado River. So, along with the river, the tribes maintain the Ahakav Tribal Preserve, a wilderness area stretching across more than 1,200 acres, where they've planted stands of native mosquito trees, right? So they get some proceeds from the mosquito trees. Now, this legislation would enable CRIT to release water in Arizona to an entity such as a city for up to 100 years with possibility of renewal, and would also allow the tribes to exchange and store some of their water off the reservation. Other native nations in Arizona with congressionally approved water settlements already have the ability to lease water and have been making deals to send water to cities and suburbs that are searching for supplies. These tribes, which receive Colorado River water through the Central Arizona Project Canal, includes Gila River Indian Community, Ak-Chin Indian Community, Salt River Paima Maricopa Indian Community, and Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation, among others. Right? So my thing was, and there's a spot, give me a second here. Now look here, right? This is the river, the Colorado River, the background, and this is their personal canal, basically, right? And I'm not saying, and that's actually, let me say it like this: this is the CRIT Canal, and what I mean is that, like, they have, it's not a lot of, it's not like a huge looking amount of water to begin with, is what I'm getting at, is what I'm seeing. I don't know what you see there, right? Now, when you make an agreement that could be 100 years in the middle of what they're calling climate change, right? I'm wondering if everybody's running out of water, right? supposedly, then why would the tribe give their water today, right? And I know what the first thought is, but you got to think about the history of this, and that's where this. I gotta find it in the article here, but that's where like, how can you make a deal on water? Because 25 more years from now, when they don't have any water, you know, what's gonna happen there, right? Hold on, give me a second here. This is a pretty cool article though. If you want to check it out, it's in azcentral.com. And let's get back to it. So that's their right here. This is their canal, and they want to sell off rights to a percentage of their flow, so to speak, to go to help Arizona, and they'll get paid for it today. So there was a spot here where I was talking about, and it really made it make a different clarity to me, because it was speaking about how they had felt bad about the deals they had got in the past from the government, right? And all right, so the tribes received $30 million from the state, and an additional $8 million was pledged by philanthropic groups, including Walton Family Foundation, Water and Water Funder Initiative, with the support of corporations like Intel, Microsoft, Procter & Gamble, and Cox Communications. And there was a part where it was talking about how one of the deals they had got was $1 per acre is what the government gave them for their land to lease it from them. And I was kind of like just wondering how much of a better deal they think they're going to get on the water, one, and it's kind of like a kind of risky position to put their whole nation in, basically, is to put themselves minus like 25% of their water. It was like 24% or 23 or something like that. Don't quote me on that part, but it was something significant, right? And they said how they had already started changing their farmlands, and not growing on certain ones to like have this set in place, from their absorption standpoint. And I was wondering, it's kind of weird that we have to tie it into the title of the video. It's kind of weird that there's a focus on going to Mars at the same time there's supposedly a drought or droughts on Earth. Because how you gonna go to Mars if you can't make water on Earth? How you gonna go to Mars? Like, you gotta make water there, supposedly, right? So that brings us to where we're gonna close with 7 technologies that's out there right now to bring water, right? But I'm thinking more so, honestly, I'm thinking like if you got CERN, you got these high tech situations and apparatuses like CERN, for example. You're smashing atoms together, and you're doing all this stuff, studying the building blocks of the universe. If you got trillions of dollars to do that, why isn't there some of these water technologies on scale where you can say you can make water, between this technology and atomic technology, it shouldn't be any droughts in places where you don't want them to be, so to speak. Maybe I'm over analyzing. Virgos do that. But in many places in the world here, so we got solar power water filtration. Okay. And what I thought was cool is that this has been proven. So in many places of the world, the problem isn't that there isn't enough water, right? But that the water is contaminated. So they have to clean it there. Fog catchers. This is pretty interesting idea. They in some places groundwater supplies have been used up, so this is pretty relevant. And entire villages and regions have a severe water shortage, including that place region of Morocco. But what this region has an abundance of is fog. So they created this thing where they can put it up on the mountain, and it catches the fog and converts the fog into water, basically drinking water. All right. California got mountains there. Maybe they got fog on their mountains too. You know, they definitely are sitting right there by the ocean, and they could take a page from Israel's playbook and look into the desalination. Right? So I'm sure you guys are already familiar with what that is. Maybe not how it's done, so to speak, but you're basically going to take the salt water from the sea and make it palatable water. And this drinkable book, we're not gonna use that one here. But then they have water from air zero mass water. So it uses solar power to create enough clean drinking water for 2 to 3 people, or roughly 10 liters a day. The technology, called the Source Hydro Panel, runs on a pretty simple premises. Solar energy heats a sponge-like material to create condensation that is collected in a 30-liter reservoir. The water is filtered and minerals are added, which you may or may not want to do that, to improve the taste of the water. Remember, they taught us in school, water is tasteless, odorless, and colorless. Pure water. So when you're adding minerals, or you're getting water that has minerals added, you gotta understand that you have a taste because there's stuff that's in there that's not supposed to be in there. Anyway, that's another video. I did that. Maybe I'll put a link to that video up here so you can catch that one. So Zero Mass is partnering with NGOs worldwide to provide clean and safe drinking water. So this will probably be what'll be on some people's lawns soon. Like going back to lawns, like how the lady in the beginning was saying how they told people they couldn't have grass in their front yard. You know, all this stuff because one, why it's just like certain things it just makes sense when you think about it. Like if you already knew in 1930 you had trouble delivering with the population in the desert, right? Because you need to do this building process, other Hoover Dam, to service the population, then that already meant that you didn't have enough water to begin with, right? And I'm not saying things don't change. That's actually what I am saying. And something like on the East Coast couldn't all of a sudden be going through this if water was to shift or divert, natural water was to flow different. Yes, agreed. It's the same problem everywhere. What I'm getting at though is in the middle of the desert, it kind of takes a little bit more precedence because you don't have any other flows around you. But the point of the matter is this: the population growth. You know, everybody's accounted for everything else but the population growth. Why would you? So the population growth, both residential and commercial, right, has actually put more of a demand on something that was built based upon whatever they thought in the 30s or whenever it was built 100 years ago. I'm not exactly sure on the date. And that hasn't been brought up in the thing. So the thing is, when you design that, you got a total volume of water that was based on what you thought you needed in the 30s, and I'm just throwing the 30s out there, but I'm probably sure with the population explosion and the movement of everybody that went that way and now lives on the West Coast, how accurate is that in consideration? Probably not that accurate, considering they're running out of water, right? And you can't buy more, rain or mountain ice to flow down into y'all little machine. So you got to have something else to create water, right? And considering that you're talking about hydrogen and oxygen, not exactly sure why we're in a position where it's easier to go to Mars once than to invest in water facilities. From what we learned on the West Coast, we could actually have systems like this in place everywhere, right? And then the natural reservoirs could be just that, reservoirs. Like, they could be reserves. And then you could just let the flow through once they fill up, and you would never have to use them unless something goes wrong with the system. Maybe the problem is that you're having that be the source of the water to begin with. Okay? So you done built it, you done harnessed it, it worked for 100 years, but you're smashing atoms and going to Mars instead of, coming up with a way to produce water, which it would be smart to actually have that figured out before you go to supposedly go to a place where you're going to have to produce all the water. It'd be a good testing ground to quench thirst on Earth before venturing to far, far away places. Pasha Paro, YNS7. Thank you for tuning in. The replay.